This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
Breaking overnight, police investigating a double shooting on Allegheny Street in West Charlotte. You can see from our video there, our photographer shot on scene that it looks like bullets hit a car. Medic says one person has life-threatening injuries, the other expected to be okay. We've reached out to CMPD for more information, and we'll let you know as soon as we get that.
We do begin this morning with breaking news. One person is dead, another in the hospital after a shooting. Burlington police tell us officers responded to the Travelers Rest mobile home park on North Church Street last night shortly before 11:30. They found the body of a 19-year-old man beside the road, another person with multiple gunshot wounds in a car on North Church Street. Police are not releasing their names until their next of kin can be notified. They also haven't said what they believe led to the violence or whether they're looking for any suspects at this time.
But we're going to begin with a search for an armed and dangerous man wanted for murder in Monroe. Police need your help finding Elijah Bennett. That's his photograph. Take a good look at your screen. They say he was involved in a killing of 42-year-old Alvin Brewer. That happened back at the end of January. WBTV's Christy O'Connor joins us now live from the apartment complex where Brewer was found hanging on to life. Christy, you've got some new information on this search for us tonight.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Maureen. Monroe police made 2 arrests in this case already of a minor and a woman earlier this week, and they're waiting for that 3rd arrest to happen. They're still looking for Elijah Bennett, but I pulled the arrest warrants of J.K. Hammond. She was a woman arrested earlier this week in connection to this case, and I found some new information about what may have led up to this shooting. According to those arrest warrants, the 3 people that police say were involved in this case were attempting to rob the victim here at the apartment complex, Chase Monroe Apartments, which I'm standing in front of. When they arrived, they have not said, rather, what led up to the shots being fired. But as you mentioned, when they arrived, they found Alvin Brewer hanging on to life. He later died at the hospital. Now, I spoke with police today. They say that Elijah Bennett, who they're still looking for, has stated that he will not be apprehended.
We have gotten word from other folks that this individual said that he would fight it as best he could. But, you know, we're going to approach it with extreme safety and caution to make sure our officers and the public are safe. But we do need to apprehend this individual.
And there are warrants out for his arrest. Once he is captured, he will be facing a first-degree murder charge. If you have any information about this case, you're asked to call the Monroe Police Department. Reporting live in Monroe, Christy O'Connor, WBTV, on your side.
We'll continue to watch.
Wadesboro is known for being a small, quiet town.
And it's not like a bad environment. Like, it's straight. Like, everybody knows each other. We're all cool.
Until Friday night.
And my boy called me. He was like, yo, are you at work? And I'm like, nah, why? I just left. He's like, oh, like, there was a shooting, like, at your restaurant.
Police say gunshots rang out inside Mr. D's Bar and Grill. Gio, who doesn't want us to use his last name, works just down the street from Mr. D's and says he didn't believe the news when his friend called late Friday night.
Yeah, I thought he was playing around, like, just to, like, mess with me, you know?
Police say 30-year-old Robbie Harris shot and killed 3 men and injured a woman at the bar around 11:30 Friday. Saturday, friends came to mourn the loss of the victims and to pray for healing.
It's pretty sad.
Police say Harris has been charged with 3 counts of murder. In Wadesboro, Katie Solt, Spectrum News.
A case too close to home. The 16-year-old granddaughter of a local sheriff shot and killed at a sleepover.
The last 24, 36 hours have been a torment for everyone.
Tonight, we're with investigators as they piece together what happened moments before the gun went off.
Tonight, this 22-year-old faces several charges in the shooting death of Shondasia Smith, including involuntary manslaughter. I'm Erica Bryant.
And I'm Blair Miller. This is a difficult case for every investigator who touches it. And Eyewitness News reporter Jim Bradley was with those investigators as they went through the evidence at the scene. Jim?
As you can imagine, Blair, this has been a very emotional day here at the Ensign County Sheriff's Department. The sheriff and his staff find themselves investigating the death of his own granddaughter, a case, as you mentioned, where a suspect has been charged, but there are lots of questions. When Anson County's new sheriff, Landrick Reed, was sworn in last year, it was his granddaughter, Shondacia Smith, who stood at his side. Now, Reed's deputies and the SBI are investigating her shooting death. It happened early Sunday morning inside this mobile home just outside Wadesboro, where a rifle shot hit Shondacia in the head. Today, we saw detectives loading bags and boxes of evidence into a car. Angela McGowan told us Shondacia was at a sleepover with other girls.
They always slept over. It was just a god-awful accident. And I don't want to interfere in any way with any investigations.
Investigators say another visitor was inside too. They say 22-year-old Roger Rory Jr. was holding the gun when it went off. But beyond that, they're not saying for sure what happened.
We're still trying to pin down, who all was there, who saw what, and exactly what caused the weapon to fire.
After allegedly trying to hide the gun, Rory was arrested for obstructing justice and also contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. Late this afternoon, authorities added involuntary manslaughter charges. At the house where it happened, Angela McGowan summed it up this way.
The last 24, 36 hours have been a torment for everyone.
The SBI says it believes alcohol may have been involved here. They don't, however, believe the shooting was intentional. They're still trying to piece things together as the sheriff here grieves his loss. Live in Wadesboro, I'm Jim Bradley, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Jim. Sheriff Reed is the first African-American to be elected sheriff in the county's history.
When he spoke with Channel 9 back in January, he told us he is proud of his historic standing, but he also wants to be known as the best sheriff. Hundreds have commented and shared this story on our WSOC TV Facebook page today, leaving messages and prayers for that family. You can too, just like our page.
So this is the third iteration of an episode for this week. So I think what I've decided is this is going to go first, and then I'm going to release the other episode. There's so much breaking news and true crime. I felt like I needed to come back and address some things. This one is not necessarily related to our season 2, but it's two stories. And I thought these stories would be more personal, and I thought that I could mix in some of the things that I've been looking at in true crime. But what I really wanted to do here is I wanted to address some of the things going on around the country and pick a couple of things that people hadn't necessarily heard about. The first one is going to be me because it's short. Back last year, I went and worked on a Netflix film, and I spent a lot of time down in Georgia. And while I was there, when you're on a film set, you get close to the people that you see every day. This particular film set was different because we were there sequestered, meaning I could check out with hotel security in the morning and I had X amount of time and miles to make it to the studio and to check in there. Even if I wasn't called for hours, I had to go in and have a nasal swab, a COVID nasal swab. And, we had special parking. We had special places we could and could not go. They had the entire, all the studios that we worked on down there were broken into sections called red zone, green zone, and yellow zone. I was a green zone personnel for this entire sequestered time because I was being quarantined in a hotel ahead of time and then kept from the public. So you get close to people in those situations. And in my group, there were 40 of us working together. And we all still keep in touch. Some of us knew each other beforehand. And while I was there, I worked with three groups of people. One group was the assistant directors for the movie in the first AD capacity and the second AD capacity. Those are the people who really make the movie. The first ADs are doing everything that the director wants and the director of photography wants. The second ADs are doing a lot of the wrangling, and they are constantly running, and they are in charge of the production assistants. These are all union people. They're all, most of them are professionals moving up the ranks in some regard or another. A lot of different age groups, a lot of different socioeconomic classes, because some of them work once a year, some of them work all year. This was a huge Netflix production that we were working on. And there were several A-list actors on this. Ryan Reynolds was one of them. Dwayne Johnson is another. Gal Gadot, she was on this shoot. Very, very, very warm and loving group of people all around us. If we got in trouble, we got quarantined back for X number of days, depending on what we had done. And that means if we had gone off site, or if we had a false positive COVID test, or if we had actually done something where it seemed like we were breaking part of the bubble. There were a wide variety of ways to do that. One of the weird things that happened was, so we were there until just before Thanksgiving last year. And in December, one of the people that I had worked with for all this time, after Thanksgiving, before Christmas, I think it was around the 13th, a guy named Brian Magwood. He was a PA and one of the second assistants on the movie. He frequently was one of the first people I saw in the morning, and I would go into the lot. I would sign with security. I have my temperature taken. And then I would see Brian, because he would be standing kind of checking us in as we all went in for our first COVID test of the day. And what happened with Brian was he got into a gunfight in an Atlanta apartment where he ended up shooting someone. And there were 3 people in the apartment. When he shot one man, a woman who was in the apartment with them grabbed the gun and shot and killed Brian. So the man that Brian shot lived. The woman was not charged, and Brian was shot, and he was pronounced dead when officers arrived that night. This is just before midnight. It was a Monday night in mid-December. And I realized that a lot of things that we do, we don't have like an inside look at what was going on. And in this case, I really didn't. But I'd been working with Brian for multiple months when this happened. And it really shocked me. It was something that I didn't really know how to respond to. And ultimately, the way it played out in terms of investigation and in terms of like what the police thought and what everyone thought, Brian was in the wrong. And that really bothered me. He was not someone I had known like a really long time or anything, but I did work with him closely every day. And he was a tiny bit of a troublemaker. I think he got in trouble twice while I was on set. And I say that like trouble, it was more like getting in trouble in elementary school. You go to your corner. Primarily, I think that he was trying to visit young ladies in their rooms maybe, or had possibly gone off site to get something. Or we had an ongoing issue with people smoking weed, but they put, 500 Hollywood types in 2 hotels. And, I guarantee you there was more than weed going on behind some of the closed doors, that's just how it is on like when you work on a set and you have a bunch of crew that, I think the oldest crew members were in their 60s. The youngest crew members were late teens-ish. So I just wanted to mention that incident because I briefly talked about it in an episode, but I didn't really like go into any detail on it because when it happened, it was really shocking to me. And I dug into it as much as I could. And it got a blip on the internet and on news sites for just a minute, and then it was gone. And this guy's life was over. We do a lot of research on our own that like never makes the podcast, and it never really.
It's constant, yeah.
Yeah, like we're constantly doing things. Even this week, I think I've sent you 2 or 3 webinars and seminars related to like behavioral psychology and to cold case genealogy, and like I've signed you up for
You
things.
registered me for it.
I signed you up for things.
I got the confirmation emails.
Yeah, so we're constant, and we watch true crime. I used to listen to a lot more true crime podcasts than I currently have. So I went away for my birthday, which you have asked about in the other episode that we're doing, which is now out of sync. It'll be after this, but I was working on a film set that's it's very different. I'll just say it's a true crime documentary. And while I was working on that set, I went down to the set and worked like from basically Saturday through Wednesday. And my birthday was in the middle of all that. The area that we worked was very beautiful. It was like this, it was a very private and quiet area away from airports and away from crowds. And it was out sort of in the middle of nowhere. And while I was there, not just then, but like in the immediate time after, I started chasing a murder case that was out of Raleigh, North Carolina. This set is in North Carolina. The story is in North Carolina. It's not anything anyone has ever heard about because it's a very unique jurisdictional thing going on. But when I get there, I'm still like reading the local news because it's like really easy to just turn on the TV wherever you are and like find the news. And like, that's what leads, whatever crime is happening. And I'm from North Carolina originally. That's where I lived a huge portion of my life. I went to college and I have family there. And I know that you have North Carolina ties as well. So when I started this, I was chasing this one murder case because it was really interesting to me how it was all sort of unfolding. It happened on like right off a college campus to a non-student at that college who was a student at another college and was just basically taking advantage of the low-cost housing nearby. A very young lady had been stabbed to death. And that story was unfolding over the course of several days. And I ended up, I called, I made some inquiries on the case. It's going to have to play out in court because it was made very clear to me that like they knew what had happened and like there was a fiasco there because there's always a fiasco, but it was considered to be a domestic incident. So it wasn't like everybody involved was, it didn't seem like anyone was going to be talking, and it didn't seem like there was much of a mystery to the story. Like the investigators had pretty much like pulled all the information about both sides. They knew who their suspect was, who became the defendant very quickly. They knew who the victim was, and they knew their relationship. And in the middle of me sort of doing my own due diligence of that, you messaged me and say, "Hey, do you remember this person?" And I did remember the person that you asked me about, but he was younger than I was, but I remembered him from many, many years ago because he and I we were in the same high school, but he was several years behind me. And I realized that he was someone that you would have known because of the way all the local schools lined up. He would have been either in your class or the class behind you, right?
That's correct. And I was trying to figure out how I could include this without giving too much away. And I think I can do it. Somebody that I knew for a very long time, I sent you a message because I started seeing on social media that he had died.
Yeah, we were really interested. We just wanted to know what had happened at first.
Well, and I was going to say, usually, and we're getting older now, so it's not like, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's not as surprising as if we were still in our 20s or something. It started a couple people on social media, and then it was weird that nobody was saying how he had died. So that had like a weird effect on me because I wanted to know. And I looked and looked and looked and looked because normally somebody will say, "Oh, he was in an accident," or you can find the accident on the Daily Bulletin, right? Of some
right. And I want to say something for context here. Like we've had a lot of people in our class, like not just from school, but like from other things around that, people that were our age who have recently lost loved ones, to accidents and to COVID. So it's become sort of a barrage of us looking at this information online. And in this instance, you had an instinct because some things were popping up. You know, people do like GoFundMes to raise money to cover funerals and to support loved ones that are left behind. And you had an instinct that I don't know why you chased it, but what was off about it? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I can't tell you. I guess it's just my spidey sense bugged me. It bugged me a lot, actually, because I should have been able to figure out what it was. And so that happened last Thursday. And so all, weekend long, and it's not like I'm like constantly obsessed with it. It's just like when I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to see if his obituary is published, or, see if somebody that I am, on with social media that also knows him, if they've said anything, or, stuff like that. There was nothing. And, I watched the GoFundMe they were raising tons of money. Everybody had all kinds of good things to say. And
this went like way beyond the normal stuff, though. I want to point this out. Like this, so he was a teacher.
Well, we can say who it is.
I'm going to,
okay.
but hold on. So he was a teacher, and the school came out and like used one of his sort of catchphrases that like was his thing, and explained that he had died tragically, suddenly. And then the GoFundMe mentioned that he had died suddenly. And this guy, we're in our 40s, but not so far into our 40s that it's super common to see people, dropping like flies. COVID upped that a little bit, but this guy was a really well-respected teacher at like a well-known school. And he was also a basketball coach. So the things that were going up about him at first were very warm and supportive and painted. It was like the true crime documentaries where he lit up a room.
The past revered.
Right. Yeah. Like it's a past revered.
And honestly, I felt like when I found out he had died and I didn't know how, I felt like I got kicked in the chest. It was just that kind of like, because I'm like, well, they're going to come out and say he had a heart attack, right? That's what I'm thinking, because there was no car accident. I know somebody had said, no, he didn't die of COVID. It got to the point, I wasn't the only one that was wondering. There were others.
This guy was really gregarious, but he was one of those people that typically when you saw him, he was into something, smiling, and he was engaging. Even the shy side of him was polite. So
yeah, I would say that that's accurate. He was a very fun person to be around. He was always he was put together. He had things, in order. And yeah, I don't remember ever having him ever saying anything bad about anybody ever. Like, he was just a really nice person to be around. And I completely empathized and went along with every good thing I saw written about him, because everybody was like, oh, this hurts so bad. We've lost another classmate. And so I had gone to school with him for my whole life, basically.
But the biggest part about this, okay, first of all, he didn't live close to where I was in North Carolina. He was hours away.
Right.
But
he doesn't.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say he doesn't live close to anything relevant, really. That's why I was like, good luck.
Right. So we had looked and we had sought out like all the basic things. You can grab incident reports. You can look for news articles. We were looking for all of the things that we could find to indicate, like, had there been emergency services out to his house? Had it been some situation where they went out for an overdose call, or did they go out for a suicide or a death investigation? And I went looking through all of the daily bulletins and incident reports I could find, and I knew he lived several hours from where I was while all this was happening, because this is the craziest part. From where I was for the feature film, he was 7 miles away from me, but he didn't live there. And that's where when this all came out, it sort of shattered everything they had said. And I don't think that's an accurate depiction, because he genuinely was the good guy with the past revered. He just happened to have another side. And that's something people don't remember about other people. My wife looked at the whole situation last night, and her thing was, well, you don't ever know everything about someone. And I think that's important to remember with what we tell you next.
Right. And so yesterday we recorded the normal show, and I was still waiting to find out what had happened to my classmate. And so right after we were done recording, I checked the news, and suddenly it had changed, because it had said beloved coach died unexpectedly, basically is what it said in the head, because he was on a headline, and it was just like he had to get pretty close to where he was a coach at to find the information. It wasn't like all over anywhere. And I had to do a double take, because I read it and I thought, oh, my page must have not completely loaded, because this headline has been mixed in with another headline, most certainly.
Yeah. So this is where it gets really crazy. Do you want me to tee it up, or you want to do it?
I'm gonna do it, but I wanted to make sure I say it accurately, because it was so shocking. Okay, so this is what popped up, and it had broken about 4 minutes before I checked yesterday after we got done recording. Sheriff says Union County teacher, coach, killed in shootout with Mexican drug cartel. That's the headline.
And it just gets crazier.
And it's a picture of someone I've known a really long time. I knew a really long time. I go on to, I read what they're saying, and I listen to the entire press conference that was held at like 1 p.m., I think. I listened to it, and I have had this pain in my right arm and shoulder that hasn't gone away since I read that. Like, it's that stressful to me. Is crazy. And, I don't know for sure that what was said is, okay, so my classmate, his name is Barney Harris. I think you said he was a Spanish teacher and a coach. And, I've been anticipating to find out how he died. And then this headline comes. And so it happened in Alamance County, North Carolina, which is not where he lives, but that's where he was. And Sheriff Terry Johnson was doing the press conference. I don't know a whole lot about Alamance County or that sheriff, but I sat and watched it streaming, and I'm sure I was shaking my head nonstop, because what was being said was absolutely insane. But here's what was said. Sheriff Johnson said that Barney Harris and an associate of his, who was his brother-in-law, they went to a trailer in Green Level, which is in Alamance County, and they entered the trailer to rob the trailer of drugs and money. And now it's changed slightly, but initially they said that basically they were laying in wait for the occupant of the trailer to return. And when the occupant of the trailer returned, that occupant being an 18-year-old boy, they tied his wrists and ankles together, and he was shot twice in the back of the head. And then some more stuff happened, and ultimately there was a Western-style shootout during which over 30 rounds were fired, and other mobile homes in the trailer park were being hit by bullets. And when it was all said and done, Barney was found shot to death in one of the bedrooms. He had on a bulletproof vest that did not protect him against the ammunition that was being used. And he had on gloves and a mask.
To begin tonight with what we're learning about Coach Barney Harris from Union Academy Charter School. You see him here. He died a few days ago. We now know more about what led up to his death, and it involves a shootout with a Mexican drug cartel. Our Brandon Hamilton explains from Union County. Brandon.
Molly, tonight parents and those who knew Coach Barney Harris say they can't believe what they're hearing. They also don't know how the coach lived a double life, only saying that he was loved by everyone in this community.
The neighbors are shooting and the bullets are like hitting over here in our trailer.
The Alamance County Sheriff says the situation played out like an old Western shootout.
I understand we do have deputies on the way out there, okay?
That shootout last Thursday was at a suspected drug stash house for the Sinaloa New Generation Cartel. 2 people were killed, one a suspected member of the Mexican cartel, the other a shock to the Union Academy Charter School community.
Of course, everybody was shocked, you know. I know Coach Harris to be a very great man, you know. He was very encouraging to the team. Very encouraging to my son.
Authorities say beloved teacher and coach Barney Harris, his brother-in-law Stephen Stewart of Anson County, and others were at the house for a specific reason.
These Harris and his brother-in-law, which was Mr. Stewart, were following these cartel members and trying to figure out where the locations of their stashes were, their money was, and would go in like a home invasion and try to take the monies and the drugs.
Instead of a quick in and out to steal the drug cartel's money and drugs, a shootout happened. Officials say Harris was killed inside the home, despite that he wore a bulletproof vest. His brother-in-law was arrested and now faces multiple charges, including first-degree murder. Cocaine, drugs, and close to $7,000 in cash was confiscated.
Everything happened, but he was a good man from what I know. That part of him, we didn't know anything about that. I'm very shocked.
Another person who says he worked with Harris years ago told WBTV, quote, he was a mentor to a lot of kids. I'm hoping that's not lost. Being a head coach is not easy, and those kids only know him as a great coach and mentor. Union Academy, in a statement, said in part, quote, the Union Academy family was shocked and devastated to hear the information, and we will continue to focus on supporting our students and families. Here at Union Academy, the school has scrubbed its social media accounts related to Harris's death. Authorities in Alamance County say their investigation is still ongoing. More arrests are expected. In Union County, Brandon Hamilton, WBTV, on your side.
And so by the time the bodies were found, everybody else that was possibly there had left, and his brother-in-law was eventually arrested on Sunday night. They found $7,000 cash and 1 kilo of cocaine at the scene. The young man that was shot in the back of the head twice, execution style, he initially was alive, but he passed away. I don't know if it was on the way to the hospital or after he had gotten to the hospital. And so this very much respected and celebrated coach, teacher has been, I think the best way to describe it as you're driving down the highway at a normal rate of speed and you just shift your car into reverse without stopping or hitting the brake. That's what it felt like. I don't know, they're not releasing a ton of information, but I feel like there's probably more to the story.
Yeah, we ran down a number of things, and like you said, it's sort of changing as they release information here. I don't think he lay it in wait based on what they were releasing information wise. I think that was an error that they made. So everybody's aware. I've done work for years with crime analysis. I see a lot of different things that don't make the news, and this didn't feel like Like, the fact that he had a shootout with the cartel is certainly newsworthy, but the rest of this, from what I can tell in that area, they've had multiple homicides that look a lot like this. And I call them brown on black or black on brown or black versus brown crime. We debate, like, I don't think he laid in wait. I think he dropped his phone and went back for his phone. And that was the problem, because you don't want to leave any of your possessions where the cartel can figure out who you are. And because then they'll go after your family, which is another thing that I do want to address here is like his, family being taken care of. I still think people should support them in every way that they can, because more than likely, I know his children probably didn't know. I don't think, this is something that you share with your family. Although I will say his brother-in-law was involved. And his brother-in-law is now charged with the murder of the young man. And it looks like they have pending charges for felony murder on Barney's death as well, coming his way.
But so that, was the narrative. And I feel like the narrative was set because they literally didn't say a word about this. So everybody knew Barney Harris, Coach Harris, Mr. Harris, Senor Harris. Everybody knew he had died, right? But this was literally a bombshell because they hadn't even hinted at what had happened to him. And then it, breaks on the news at noon. And so the narrative it's pretty much what I said. That came out of the sheriff of Alamance County's mouth. That's his version of events. And I already see it just sort of looking through people commenting online and people not getting it. And so because the sheriff put what he wanted to out there, and, I have no idea if anybody's even going to hear any of this, but I want to give keeping in mind this is a person I knew, a past revered sort of version. And I'm not saying this is what happened, but, what if he was there to put an end to something? What if he was there because one of his kids had an issue? And I mean his kids, either, his actual kids or the kids that he taught. What if there was something deeper going on and he was actually trying to protect someone or trying to put a stop to something? I don't know for certain that might have happened, but it would fit the man I knew a whole lot more than what has been said. It makes me feel slightly better to think of it that way. But what if that really was what he was doing? And, maybe I've got blinders on, but his whole legacy was trashed. I mean, completely trashed, put down the toilet right on the, 1 o'clock news feed with a press conference. I haven't heard a press conference like that with that much information in a really long time.
Well, people are going to get to hear it here because I am uploading it as part of this episode because I feel like it's important. So I had been looking at houses out there around that area. Like, I guarantee you that I passed through where this happened because I was on the road less than 2 weeks ago, maybe a little more. But I had gone out there because there's a body of water near there. It's very beautiful and the land is low cost. And this is in the middle of nowhere. And I don't know that I agree with your narrative there, but I don't see it. Like, I think I told you, like, this would make the best heist movie ever.
Well, and I'm not saying that I'm correct. This is probably just me having a coping mechanism to work through it or whatever, because it is like shocking is a really good word for it, but it's so much more than shocking because like I said, I felt like I got kicked in the chest and then it just got worse.
Yeah, dropping the news that like somebody died in a shootout with the cartel is a huge deal. In that area around there, like I said, if you go 2 hours east of there, I would totally believe this story. I've had run-ins over the years with different types of organized crime in that area where at some point I might bring some of that up. But this area right here, my guess is these kids are MS-13. That is my guess right now. But the sheriff was very reckless in the press conference, so I'm going to play it because I want people to hear it.
So I know you finally got to watch it, but we didn't really talk about it. Did you agree that was just crazy?
I think he's, like I did a little more research on him because I'm not super familiar with him. My dealings in that area, like even the land that I was looking at, like it's weird. There's a county line there. And everything that I looked at was east of the county line, and the sheriff's county is west of the county line. I think he made a lot of assumptions and did some grandstanding and a little soapboxing in the press conference. I understand his frustration, and his statistics are spot on, because I went back through news articles last night as far as the increase in seized cash and seized drugs. It is significant, and it is affecting his area. So on the one hand, I don't really blame him. On the other hand, I think he's talking out of both sides of his mouth there a little bit, because it's interesting. And I think one of the first things I said to you was, wow, with the DEA there, how is a high school basketball coach able to track a Sinaloa cartel stash house that the DEA doesn't know about? That's weird.
Right. And the increase, well, I think it's okay. So, yeah, the increase in like the statistics that were said, and they are true, it is becoming a big problem through that area. To me, that is just as much a spark for vigilante type justice as it is for, the other, what has been reported of this. And like I said, I don't know what happened. I just find, having known somebody pretty much my entire life, I find what was told very unbelievable. That doesn't mean that that's not what happened. It's just, it's weird. And I feel like there's a lot of things at work here, and it makes me wonder, like, I don't feel like we'll ever really know the truth. Greatly saddens me that they came out the way they did. Now, you said the
MS-13 is, they're not directly related to the CDS. The CDS is the cartel that they're blaming this on. That's the Sinaloa cartel. They're responsible for a large amount of the cocaine trafficking that comes through this area around where this happened. They're responsible for a lot of the heavier drugs. They're going to be responsible for heroin, fentanyl, large amounts of prescription drugs and cocaine in that particular corridor. That corridor, from what you could look at statistically speaking and crime analysis version of events, it's called the 85 pipeline. And that area is it's an area where people can go east or west and reach a large number of major cities. And if you go east of there, you can hit 95 and hit Miami or New York. If you go west of there, you can get into the middle of the country really easily and spread out from there. Traditionally, the MS-13 have handled the CDS territory in North Carolina, and they compete with several different gangs, and those gangs have different racial affiliations.
I see. Okay, and it is my opinion that I'm going to give this away, but Barney was entirely too old,
so
in my opinion.
This gets into a bunch of interesting territory, like really fast, and that's why I was saying I might talk about it later. First, I'm going to say a couple of things here. First off, if all they recovered from that scene was $7,000 and a kilo of coke, somebody had some bad information, or the cartel cleaned it out as the gunfight went down, or we're looking for more people on Barney's side that cleaned it out. So,
well, that's been my assumption. I think what was left after just the bodies were found when they responded to the 911 call. So all the people that cleared out, because they couldn't have shot each other the way they were found. So there were other people there, and I doubt very seriously Barney's brother-in-law killed him. So, and the other kid's already dead. So yeah, there were other people there. And I have a feeling the $7,000 in the kilo of cocaine was what was left.
I think it was somebody's
didn't
emergency
grab.
bag that they were trying to skim on the side or something, or it was what they took out into the world to work, so to speak. But there's another shooting not far from there that, like, I could see this being retaliation for that. I could see that being retaliation for this. The interesting part about all of this to me is we're never going to hear the whole story. I said it while you were talking. I said, we will not hear the whole story, but I'm going to say it again. We won't hear what actually happened there because I don't think investigators will ever know what actually happened. What they will have is a giant pile of manure told to them by a bunch of people that were involved if they ever get their hands on the other people. And all of that story will be bullshit. And I don't think it's going to turn out to be like this was for the kids or anything like that. But I firmly believe that, like, if you've got middle-aged African-American guys, black guys who have pretty respectable, one of them at least has a very respectable life, going in on, teenage, what amounts to gang members. And I know people will say that's the wrong way to address this. I don't know what else to say. Drug distribution professionals in training. I don't know. Like they're apprentices in organized crime at this point. They're trying to, they're being used by other older people who are not quite our age, but who are probably not going to live as long as we have. And there's a lot of disparities going on here that I don't think the investigators will ever be able to sync up because,
Okay,
no, it
but
doesn't
so
make
it
sense. Like
doesn't make sense
even if I
then.
look at
Right.
Barney and I can tie him back to some of these other gangs that I am familiar with that operate in Mecklenburg County, Union County, Wake County, Durham County. Even if I could tie him to that, he's still aged out to be doing this type of work. This feels personal.
Right,
And if
that's
they're saying
exactly
he
what
lied
I
in wait
thought.
and they can prove he lay in wait with his, because they use his phone information. They're saying his phone was in, before the 911 calls, his phone was in that trailer for an exorbitant amount of time, like 20 to 25 minutes. So they felt like he lied in wait and then committed the homicide. I don't think that's necessarily what happened. And what I described to you was I feel like he went back, and the confrontation of going back to get the phone is what led to the shootout. I think otherwise they might have gotten away with it.
Oh, yeah. And so there's two things about that. I find it really strange that it is strange, and it really doesn't make sense that he lied in wait for 20 minutes, but yet they're saying he went there to rob the place. It's in big, bold letters that, they were there
Right.
to rob the place. And there's very little as far as allegations go. Like, these are like almost stated, and you'll hear it in the press conference. It's almost stated as like fact, as if, and Barney didn't get a trial. He's dead. He was not charged in this crime. He paid a price, that was divvied out to him by something other than our justice system. You can say he deserved it all you want. I have no idea. I'm very shocked by it. Now, let me ask you this, and this is another, past revered moment, I suppose. But do you think, okay, so one of the things that they said was they went there to rob the place, and the reason that they sat there and waited was because they wanted more information from the kid about where more stuff was, okay? Because this was a stash house, and so it was on the way somewhere else, right? And so Barney was a Spanish teacher. Do you think it's possible that it was more his brother-in-law's involvement and he was there as an interpreter?
Look, he showed up. His face is covered. He's wearing gloves. He was wearing a bulletproof vest. He had no intention of killing anyone or being killed. Otherwise, there's no reason to cover your face, and there's no reason for the vest.
See, that's what I thought too. And it seems to me like law enforcement was saying the opposite. If you are covering yourself up, you don't mind if there's a witness, because
I mean,
who
that
cares?
scenario
They
would
didn't
work
see you.
if we were gonna just speculate end on end for this. Yes, that scenario could potentially work. That it could also be that he didn't know exactly what he was getting into, that he had, rolled people like this before. There's something wrong with this, and
Okay, good. I'm glad that somebody else sees that, because I know I'm probably living in fantasy land making up all this other stuff, but if everybody else can say like the most worst negative stuff, I can
Oh
go in
yeah,
La
no,
La
you're allowed
Land
to.
too.
You're definitely allowed to speculate on this side of it, because, and that's one of the reasons we're recording right now, because I could hear it when you called me. We had already recorded. You called me and said there's a press conference. I knew there was something to all of this, and then started sending me links. It took me a while to get back, like, to my day completed, where I could go back and like sit down and like look at it and think about it. And honestly, it's a lot of information to absorb in a very short period of time, even for me, which I do that regularly. But in this instance, I could definitely see where, and like I said, I'll roll the press conference here in just a minute after we're done talking. But like, I do think people should listen to stuff like this. And it's so interesting because what pops up on the screen in here at one point is if you see something, say something. And then it's got the community crime mapping for that area that pops up. That is so interesting to me, because this is more like if you see something, do something, with the speculation that you're running with, which, I mean, this could be as simple as his brother was a dealer. I ran through the brother-in-law's criminal record, like briefly before we started talking. I could see this being the brother-in-law answers to someone else and gets ripped off. And he decides to follow them back. But if it was just Barney and just the arrested gentleman, his brother-in-law, then they were definitely in over their head. And the sheriff describing them as two different factions of, organized crime is disturbing. But that area is notoriously racist against both African American and any shade of brown.
Yes, that's true. And the reason I know that's true is because, in recent years, there's been quite a bit of uproar about specifically that sheriff's behavior and the way that he ran his department, and how it was targeting different, it was racial profiling in the discharge of their duties, and it was wrong. So, and I think that weighs heavily on what's being said, and it could lead to assumptions that could blur lines. And yeah, I get it that
we have three generations at work here. So there's a generation that's this under 20 crowd, right? Then you've got our generation that's kind of in the middle of all of this, and then you've got the sheriff's generation. And
how old do you think he is?
Johnson, Terry Johnson? I don't. He's very old.
Like 70?
I would have to look him up, but he is definitely like older gentleman. Like
it was like they specifically wanted to knock
There's a lot
Barney
to say
down
about Terry Johnson that I could address at some point, but I play in that area enough. I really don't want to have a problem. I will say this: he retired from the SBI at his full retirement age 20 years ago. And I think in his area, that would be 55.
In North Carolina, when we think of a model sheriff, there's only one person that comes to mind.
Well, I'm going down that road feeling bad, Lord. Yes, I'm going down that road feeling bad. Yes, I'm going down that road feeling bad, Lord, Lord. And I ain't going to be treated this way. How'd you like that, boys?
This is the Andy Griffith Museum. It resides in Mount Airy, North Carolina, which is the hometown of Andy Griffith. He's a kind and neighborly sheriff, always seeking the best interests of the community.
I grew up watching Andy Griffith. And a lot of people run for the office of sheriff for personal gain. I didn't run for sheriff for that. I'm like Andy Griffith. I believe in and want to help the people of my county. My name is Terry Stephen Johnson. I'm Sheriff of Alamance County, North Carolina, and I've been in law enforcement going on 48 years. I've currently been sheriff for 17, getting ready to go on 18. Alamance County is a conservative county. The town of Graham, the county seat, is a little bit like Mayberry, North Carolina, when Andy Griffin showed in that most of the people know each other. They care about their community. They care about the people, that live here and the people coming in. And I think it's very important that we keep that type of atmosphere here in Alamance County. The sheriff is the keeper of the jail, and he needs to look after the security of his county and his state.
Rarely did Sheriff Andy Griffith have more than 1 or 2 inmates in his jail. Today, that concept is almost inconceivable in America.
In North Carolina specifically, rural county jails have seen an explosion in their jail populations for various reasons.
Dawn Blagrove is a lawyer and the executive director of the Carolina Justice Center. Her organization works on criminal justice issues in North Carolina.
Sheriffs have an incredible amount of power over what your local criminal justice system looks like. In North Carolina, the sheriff's office is a creation of the state constitution. The sheriff's office is on the same hierarchical tier as the governor's office. So you need to know what they think and where they stand policy-wise and what type of culture they are going to create in your county.
Sheriff Johnson would like to think that he creates a culture within Alamance County that resembles that of Mayberry. Andy Griffith was often the only one in town who could see the goodness in people, particularly those who were considered outsiders. Over the last 20 years, the number of Latinos moving into Alamance County has more than doubled, and longtime residents may consider them outsiders. Some critics in the county and state believe Sheriff Johnson's words and actions have created an environment that is hostile towards Latinos, particularly immigrants.
The people that we're trying to hold here are criminal, illegal immigrants that is actually raping our citizens in many, many ways. The jails are full all over this nation of immigrants, criminal immigrants, not the people just crossing the border, but the people that are coming here for a reason to victimize our children, our citizens with drugs, murders, rapes, robberies, you name it.
In the video just shown from early 2019, Sheriff Johnson was asking Alamance County commissioners for $2.8 million. The money would be used to better equip the jail and hire more staff to house detainees for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Funding was approved. We spoke with County Commission Chair Amy Gailey.
Why go through the situation with the ICE detainees and holding them here? Well, because there is some kind of financial advantage.
Is there money to be made? Yes, by cooperating with ICE officials inside of the state. Our small rural counties taking advantage of that money and that opportunity? Absolutely.
More and more federal money is now being increasingly accessed by local law enforcement. And there's money to be made by filling them with immigrants. So there are people who are doing this now who they're not politically motivated, they're financially motivated.
2 or 3 championship teams.
The financial payoff seems to be working for Alamance County and Sheriff Johnson. By November of 2019, Sheriff Johnson said he had made $3.6 million from housing ICE detainees. This isn't the first time the county and Sheriff Johnson have worked with ICE. It goes back to 2007, when the Sheriff's Office joined the 287G program. This program deputizes local enforcement officers to perform the functions of federal immigration agents. But in 2012, the Department of Justice, or DOJ, found reasonable cause to file a lawsuit against the Sheriff's Office for engaging in a pattern of discriminatory policing against the Latino community and targeting them for deportation. In 2016, the DOJ settled with Alamance County and dropped the lawsuit. But many citizens in the county and state still feel that Sheriff Johnson's involvement with ICE is detrimental to the community and harms innocent people. Today, Sheriff Johnson is working with ICE again and can hold ICE detainees for up to 90 days. Beyond the cost to taxpayers and the financial cost that comes with being locked up in jail, there is the long-term emotional and mental cost as well. Edith is a resident of Alamance County. We're not using her last name to protect her identity. What started as an unpaid ticket for a traffic violation turned into a day she will never forget.
Mi nombre es Edith. He vivido aquí en Burlington por 13 años. Yo vine aquí porque a mí se me murió una niña en México. Y ahí en ese lugar no hay hospitales cerca. Que ahora me siento como más segura con mis hijas, porque yo tenía mucho miedo antes de venirme de México para acá. Iba pasando por un retén, supuestamente un ticket que yo no había pagado. Me arrestaron, me llevaron a la cárcel. Ya vino uno de migración y me llevó con ellos. No, me tuvieron más de 4 horas ahí. Y ellos me daban un lapicero para que yo firmara los papeles. Yo les decía que yo no iba a firmar nada. Y ellos se molestaron mucho, estaban muy bien enojados, como diciendo, tienes que firmarlos. Fue un momento en que a mí me dio mucho miedo. Yo lo único que pensaba era que yo no iba a soportar haber perdido una niña y no volver a ver las otras. Eso fue lo más difícil para mí estando dentro de la cárcel. Tal vez no nos van a llevar, pero esos $200 y tantos que vamos a pagar por un ticket que nos dan, a veces eso nos está haciendo falta para darle de comer a nuestros hijos. Yo no pienso irme a mi país. Yo quiero seguir aquí, pero también quiero tener una vida mejor, que no tengamos miedo, ni yo ni mi familia latina.
Edith is one of the lucky ones. At first, she was presumed guilty, but later she was able to show her documentation to the ICE agent at the Alamance County Jail. She says her teenage daughter still has anxiety and cries when she thinks about that day.
I think there's a moral cost to us if we are increasingly putting people in jail who don't belong there, who don't represent any threat to society. In fact, historically would represent a benefit to society. If someone breaks the law, everyone is in agreement that those people need to be apprehended and removed from the streets. But that's not the population we're dealing with now. These are people who are trying to survive. They want to keep their families together and get a foothold in a place where they can thrive.
The priority of me, and has always been for me, is to protect my citizens here in Alamance County from all foreign and domestic criminals. And that's what I'll intend to do. If it means filling that jail up doing that, I will fill that jail up doing that.
When asked about the difference between those who are hardened criminals and those just seeking asylum who are being held in the detention center, Sheriff Johnson responded,
once you cross the border, you violated a law. If you're deported and then you come back across, that is a felony under federal law. We don't question the individuals that are brought here for us to hold. That is not for us to do. They have legitimate papers to hold these individuals. Laws have been broken one way or the other, and that's what we do.
How Sheriff Johnson defines a criminal is up for debate. Many people say residents like Edith, who only want to better their lives and the lives of their families, pose no harm to the citizens of Alamance County. But a sheriff gets to have the last word on this.
If our people in this nation would watch Andy Griffith and really truly study the way the people think and the way the people act in law enforcement, I think we could turn some things around in this country.
Okay. We'll see you, Rube. Right if you get work.
Things in society are changing tremendously now. I'm not sure we got many more Mayberries left.
Looking for me? Yeah.
Andy Griffith would have some words of wisdom for us, and I'm sure it would have to do with compassion towards our fellow man. I think Andy Griffith would have us reach out to our neighbors, the people who are already here from these Central American countries. They're part of our community, and they are contributing to our community. So learn more about them, learn about our existing neighbors and our new neighbors. And once we do that, the anger goes away and the compassion can bloom.
Sheriff Johnson describes himself as a Mayberry-style sheriff, but the challenges he faces in his rural jail are much more complex. His decisions have a reverberating effect in his community as he stands his ground in the center of a statewide, even national debate over immigration policies.
I think
So
I think that he's
75.
probably
That seems about
73 to
right.
75 somewhere. And that's what I'd have to look it up. I'm sure it's somewhere on the internet, and I'm just being lazy not looking it up. But he comes from a different world, and in his mind, it's not justified to me, but it's justified to his thinking that he sees people of a different skin tone and he sees an increase in drug use and he wants to throw it all together. And there are definitely racial elements to these different organizations that are operating around him. He just ignores the ones that are his skin color in favor of going after the other ones he views as outsiders.
Yeah, you're right. That is what it is. And I just pretty much try to not say anything about it at all because it really doesn't matter. It's not like he's going to change his way of thinking or doing. But I think that most importantly, while that was spewed everywhere, and it is literally everywhere now. Okay, it's a huge story. While I was trying to find it, it was just on like one little newspaper.
But I went right before I was going to talk to you. I was like, I'm so glad
everywhere.
I downloaded this beforehand.
It is, and it's crazy. And so, yeah, I mean, if you hadn't been like, let's talk about this, I wasn't going to be like, let's talk about it because it actually, it's personal and it is hard to fathom and it is not fair. He's never going to have a trial. He just got, regardless of what was happening, I have never heard law enforcement get into such unsubstantiated and unadjudicated allegations, which they didn't even call them allegations. It was like straight up. Yeah. And so I don't think that's fair. And, I happen to know Barney. And in my mind, the person I knew practically my entire life, that's not something he would have done. And, I've said earlier, that doesn't mean I know everything about him, but I'm trying to make the person I knew sort of fit. And I guess that's just all there is. But his saying, all love, no fear. And that's how he broke his huddles. That is what he lived by. So how can you, and it was to the point where before the news broke, the school had adopted the slogan and they had put it on a shirt and the shirts were for sale. Okay. So that's how much he had ingrained the all love, no fear motto. Okay. So this just wasn't a normal guy. This was a guy who had an influence on a lot of children. How is it somebody that radiates this slogan, it demonstrates the exact opposite in his death? I just feel like everybody should think for themselves about this.
I just caution people to realize that this is a sensational story. The story is surreal. Like, the story is surreal. To wake up and find out that someone far away from you that you knew in another life has been killed in what's being described as a shootout with the Sinaloa drug cartel is absolutely bonkers. But to have them also described as being somehow ripping off this cartel and like all these other things. I'm definitely not saying he's innocent. The guy was found with a bulletproof vest and essentially a mask and I don't know, and gloves. The bottom line is, I don't think you should believe the narrative that the law enforcement are going to put out about this from the federal level, from the state level, or from the local level. I think it's all going to be bullshit. And the reason I say that is because I don't think they have done an investigation in a way that they're going to get their stories straight. This totally could have been a ripoff. But if it was a ripoff, it's a much bigger ripoff than they realize. If it was just him going in to get information, they should say that. If they should say, like, he was employed by his brother-in-law his brother-in-law went in and committed a murder, and he was having him translate for him so that he could get information about another stash house, then he should say that. I mean, yes, Barney took the risk. Yes, Barney, he ate the bullet for it. But the thing they have to realize is when they put this type of bullshit press conference out, and they know it because they say it during the press conference. I don't know if it's him or one of the two investigators that are involved. These people are putting families at risk. And they said that that's the reason they held it for 3 days. But I promise you, the risk didn't go away after 3 days to other people involved with this. And I
Absolutely not. I couldn't even believe he was saying that. I mean, it seems like it's just like, why didn't he go, what
because
am
he's
I
73 years
doing?
old and
Because
or whatever is going on with him.
I
But
guess
the
so.
bottom line is people should definitely have their own opinions about this and realize, I kind of agree with those people that weren't saying anything at first. Now that they were just saying, oh, he passed away. I didn't really understand what they were saying.
Well, right. And, it's just weird how everything sort of played out here. And it could have gone not this way. I don't think anybody should be remembered for
No,
their
and that's the
worst
thing.
moments.
Like even if you account for planning and driving, this is 3 hours of this guy's life.
And this is all anybody's ever going to remember.
That's the reason that I wanted to put this out as an episode. And this is ahead of our regular episode, which I don't know how I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to be chewing the feed.
It should just be its own
definitely its
thing,
own
probably.
thing.
It's a special because
like a
it's personal to
after-school special.
both of us.
It was
in a
far
way,
more
but
personal to you, but it was in general.
it hits though. It's just unbelievable, and I would like to dedicate this episode to Barney Dale Harris, who was much more than the last 3 hours of his life. I hope that in time others will realize that. I know it's shocking, and so perhaps the good things haven't been, posted or shared or whatever. But personally, I am aware of what they've said he did. It does not change the opinion I have of the person I knew. And he wasn't a perfect person, but he should be remembered for the good things more so, hopefully, than the bad. And, you can remember that this happened to him, but also keep in mind that he was a person and he was an upstanding person for at least half the time. As far as having a double life, it pains me even to say it, but he lived by the motto of all love, no fear.
They just changed the cartel name in one of the press releases I was following. Yeah,
is it with a
they're saying
J
it's
now?
Jalisco New.
So that's
CJNG.
an arm of them.
Those were the Los Marazetas kids. That's a much more interesting group of people. But it's just funny to me that they changed the name of it.
I think that it is a huge mistake.
Yeah, let's provoke the cartel because we would like for this small county in North Carolina to have a war with a fucking cartel.
Well, and I'm wondering, does Sheriff Johnson even realize what he's
been doing it
doing?
for a long time.
As far as you could have talked about the entire thing without bringing the cartel into it.
But then,
as far as
but that's the thing.
audio
wise,
wise,
then he wouldn't have made the national news this morning.
It's not
He's
as
on the national
sensational.
news because of this.
Well, good for freaking him.
So now that they've changed the name of the cartel, I'm just going to say that I think this story is going to keep changing the entire time that it's being investigated.
It doesn't.
If
So just them changing it, I did see that somewhere, but it wasn't. That's not to say that it's not the same group of people. I think they just narrowed it down some.
That's
Basically,
probably what's going on. I understand the investigation is ongoing, but maybe like rather than like specifying which cartel is which, maybe you should figure out like the citizens of your state and what role they actually played in it before you start saying they had an old Western shootout with the Sinaloa cartel. Maybe you could do that first. So hopefully this will be something that like the real story comes out at some point and we can tell you the real story. But right now it's just a after school special of something personal that had happened to us and we wanted to share it. But rest in peace, Barney Dale Harris.
Thanks so much for taking the time to attend the Mount Alamance County Sheriff's Office press conference regarding the double homicide and burglary that took place on Thursday, April 8th at 1051 Wyatt Road in Greenville. I will be sending out digitally the pictures and the presentation as well as the press release in English and Spanish as soon as we're finished. So you should be getting that through email. Before we start, I'd love to introduce Chief Deputy Cliff Parker, Major Jackie Fortner, Captain Curtis Morris, and we have at the front those that were intimately working with the investigation for the past week. Sergeant Ray, Detective Bertani, Clerk Sheriff Johnson, and then our DA Sean Beard. So they'll be here to answer questions at the very end as well. But I'm going to go ahead and let Sheriff Johnson kind of walk you through what happened late Wednesday, early Thursday morning, and then we'll have some pictures on the side as well, okay?
So you can hear me, I'm going to probably take the mask down if we could. Let me say this has been a very tedious investigation that has not been completed at this time. And you may ask some questions myself or the district attorney that we cannot answer at this time for certain reasons. But at the end, we will be glad to answer any questions you may have. On Thursday morning, April 8, 2021, at 12:52 a.m., numerous calls was received by our Alamance County Dispatch Services. Numerous shots had been fired at 1051 Wyatt Road, Lot 27, in Mobile Home Park. Our officers responded and upon arrival found two individuals at that address. Found that they had been shot. One was deceased. That was Alonzo Beltran Lara. Was not deceased. Barney Dale Harris was. What we have here is two criminal enterprises. One belonging to the Sinaloa New Generation Cartel, that the trailer was a stash house. The other being the criminal enterprise that were robbing the stash house, or attempting to rob the stash house. What was found was over 30-some shell casings in the trailer and outside of the trailer, and 3 other mobile homes in that particular park with bullet holes in them. The investigation, after numerous hours, we assumed what happened was that Mr. Alonzo Beltran Lara, which was a drug runner for the cartel, lived in that trailer with another Latino Spanish individual, but no one was there. So what we feel like happened, Mr. Barney Dale Harris got there earlier, and that has been found to be as a result of phone information that he arrived there about 20 minutes earlier. We feel like he went into the mobile home and sat and waited for Mr. Alonzo Beltran Lara to come. Upon Mr. Alonzo Beltran Lara entering, he was taken into custody, I'll say. Hands were behind his back initially, it looks like, and his feet was bound. He was shot at some point in time during this 2 times in the back of the head, execution style. The trailer looked like it had been ransacked looking for either money, drugs, or both. A kilo of cocaine was found in a bag near where the deceased, or the young man, Alonzo Beltran Lara, was laid. He was not dead at that time. However, Mr. Barney Dale Harris, who was found in the bedroom shot numerous times, who had on a vest, face covered, and gloves, was deceased at that time. Our investigators spent many hours along with our district attorney's office and their investigator on the crime scene. Mr. Beltran, Alonzo Beltran Lara, died later on that day at the local hospital. Like I said, this was a stash house. Upon conducting a crime scene search, and it was a lengthy crime scene search, many hours that was put in this particular crime scene, because we realized that we had something that we normally don't have here in Alamance County. It was believed that it was technically a home invasion for money and drugs. Numerous guns were used, firearms was used. You could tell it was almost like an old Western shootout, because there were projectiles going into the trailer, coming out of the trailer, hitting other trailers in that particular trailer park. After many hours of investigation by the Alamance County Sheriff's Office and the Alamance County District Attorney's Office, on Sunday, April 11th, several days later, 2021, at 1 o'clock a.m., Stephen Alexander Stewart, Jr., black male, 32, of 304 Old Lillaville Road in Wadesboro, North Carolina, was arrested and charged with first-degree burglary. An additional charge later filed was first-degree murder. He is believed to be one of the individuals involved in the homicide and shooting into the trailer. There were other vehicles that was picked up. Vehicles that was used was picked up on camera. Through research of our people all over that particular area, we were able to identify a couple vehicles which would lead us to Mr. Stewart. This past Sunday night, early Monday morning, a search of the home of Mr. Stewart was conducted in Wadesboro. Firearms and related objects that were tied to the crime scene was found in that particular location. We have had the media ask us why we waited so late to put any information or to hold this press conference. Folks, I can tell you right now, when we are dealing with the Mexican drug cartels, somebody is probably going to die as a result of this right here somewhere else. And we did not want to put it out there until we could get good grips on what we had going on here. It is very challenging, first of all, to do an investigation of this depth. And also you got to take in consideration other individuals that may have been kin to these particular people involved in this, their safety. And to this day, I'll tell you right now, as sheriff, I'm still worried about some retaliation. Because the Mexican cartels, they don't forget. They're going to pay somebody back somewhere. And that concerns me greatly as sheriff of this county. Now, we ask, why is the cartels here in Alamance County? I wish I knew all the answers, but I can tell you Interstate 85, Interstate 40 corridor has really caused Alamance County to be a great place to deposit their drugs and ship them elsewhere into North Carolina. Since, and this is alarming to me, since February 19, 2021, the drug money seized by our agencies and other agencies working with us. Since February 19, over $2,292,890 in drug monies have been taken off the streets. from cartel members and drug dealers here in Alamance County. Just us on that. A total of 129.324 kilos of cocaine has been seized. We've never seen that much cocaine at one time in this county. The cost of the amount of cocaine since February 2021 has been that we've taken off the street has been $6,466,200 worth of cocaine, and that's in the packages. They take the kilos, which is 2.2 pounds, and they'll make 4 kilos out of it. And this is just what you pay right now for these kilos. Prior to February 19th, our street value when we buy a kilo of cocaine was $50,000. Buy it today is $38,000. What is that telling me is sure, the quantity is getting bigger and bigger because, in my opinion, of our open southern borders. It's coming into the inner sectors of our state and our nation. At this time, I will ask our district attorney, we'll go over some of it while we're here. This is a seizure. You can see the amounts of money. And this is just, there's other seizures that has been done, but we're not putting out there at this time for security reasons involved. Money's unbelievable. More money. Unbelievable. Here was a seizure of over 100 and some pounds of crystal meth that was to come to Alamance County. This was taken down near the border of South Carolina and North Carolina. We had an officer that spent several days in Mexico working with the Mexican authorities and DEA on this. More kilos of cocaine. I want to say to the public that if you've got any kind of special activities or suspicious activities in your community, please call us. It's our job to investigate and find out what it is. And I assure you, the people in this trailer park had seen a lot of suspicious things, but I'm telling you, people are afraid. People at the trailer park that we feel like where this happened saw some things, but they know what's going on. So I ask the public or anybody with any information pertaining to drug dealers, drug cartels, please call the Alamance County Sheriff's Office or call me personally and talk to me. I will not divulge your name. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our district attorney, who spent many hours on the crime scene with us, and like to ask our district attorney, Mr. Sean Boone, please come forward.
Good afternoon. At this time, the investigation, as the sheriff said, is ongoing. We expect additional charges and possibly additional people to be charged. At this time, Mr. Stephen Alexander Stewart has been charged with 1 count of first-degree murder in addition to first-degree burglary. That charge, we may add additional charges to Mr. Stewart and to others who may have been assisting Mr. Stewart. We also have an active warrant out for trafficking in cocaine for another person who we believe was living at the trailer. I believe it's a blonde Laura on the screen there. So at this time, those are the only pending charges that have resulted from this investigation, but we do anticipate other charges as more suspects are identified, as more activity is identified. So thank you so much.
Here are 2 primary investigators, Detective Tomey and Sergeant Tyler, who spearheaded this particular investigation. And I would like to open up at this time for any questions. If there's some I can't answer, I will ask them. Yeah. They work around the clock to bring this to the point we have it right now. And I'm going to personally thank both of them. Any questions?
Sheriff, Tyler Harden with Fox 8. So what was the connection between Harris and then these two folks, and why was Harris here? Was he here in order to kill Laura, or what was the intention there, I guess?
Well, I can tell you what we learned through the investigation. These, Harris and his brother-in-law, which was Mr. Stewart, were following these cartel members and trying to figure out where the locations of their stashes were and their money was, and would go in like a home invasion and try to take the monies and the drugs.
Yeah, hi, Samir, ABC 45. So this would be for the detectives, investigators. So obviously Mr. Harris, based out of the Charlotte area. So what was it like as you guys were investigating, kind of understanding who this person was, and I guess how brutal everything was that happened?
I don't think that particularly who each individual was affects the investigation. All we were looking for were the facts of the matter, and I think that that was really the most important part throughout this whole process.
I guess, was it a little surprising? I mean, he's a Charlotte area teacher, also a basketball coach. I mean, this man's kind of a staple in his community. He's a well-respected individual, so is it surprising to see someone like that kind of involved with this?
I don't have any personal opinion on whether or not something would be surprising. In this field, you can really end up with just about anything. So, in my opinion, I don't have one on that particular subject matter.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Brent Patterson with WF1 News 2. You said that there was bullet holes found in other surrounding trailers. Was anybody else injured in this shooting?
No, sir. Thank you, good Lord, no one else was injured. Like I say, it was 3 other trailers that received, projectiles that went in through the trailer. One of them hit a power box, knocked the power out for one family. And the individuals down there, they were totally scared to death, and they should have been.
And what was the name of this trailer park?
Well, it used to be known as Otter Creek Trailer Park, but it's made. Trailer park was just recently sold. I think it's Sunshine Trailer Park.
So, Sheriff, the use of security cameras was pretty vital in this investigation from what I understand. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and the connections that you made with the folks in the trailer park? Because when I was out there earlier, it looks like a lot of the people out there do have surveillance cameras.
Absolutely. There was cameras that was able to pick up the cars that come in. Was involved both ways in this particular case. That gave us some leads that we needed. There were some cell phones seized, the victim's cell phones that gave us a lot of leads.
In regards to Mr. Harris, is this his first time here, and his relative, is this the first time that they've been in Alamance County based off your investigation, or have they been here before?
They have been here before. As a result of some video footage off of Mr. Harris's phone, they had been here looking before.
Are you working with any other agencies to see kind of where Mr. Harris has gone to follow this cartel?
The Federal Drug Enforcement Administration and SBI were contacted on this investigation and did assist us in some of the information that we got.
As far as with Mr. Harris and his relative there who's charged, remind me again how they are related, and then also are there any other folks that are involved with Mr. Harris and his family?
Mr. Harris and Mr. Stewart are brother-in-laws. Mr. Harris's sister married Mr. Stewart, and they lived in Wadesboro. I will not comment. There's other people involved that we're in, but that's all I'm going to say about that. We know for a fact there is a warrant out for another young man that we've got information that went back to Mexico real quick. So we're working on that.
Just for clarification on the kind of timeline, the way this all transpired. So this Steven character was following the cartel for a while. They got to the stash house, there was a shootout, and then at some point after that, the man was bound and murdered execution style. Is that kind of how that played out?
Pretty much, pretty much.
What are some other ways? I know you showed several photos of money and drugs that you all have seized. What are some other ways that you are doing proactively to help deter this criminal activity in Alamance County, especially with the Mexican drug cartels?
A lot of the drugs, the 129 kilos out there, we've been taking off different drug dealers, cartel members here. Let me tell you something. We are trying every way we possibly can to curb the drug cartels and drugs coming into Alamance County. But we have seen a tremendous increase in the amount of drugs since February of this year, which tell me that the borders are open and it's coming across tons. And the sad thing is we may be only getting about 0.5% of the drugs that's coming into this county and this state.
As far as with the drugs and the drugs affiliated with this case, is that drugs that was intended, if you know, to be distributed here in Alamance County, or was that kind of one stop on a stop that they were going to another state?
A lot of it would be distributed here, but a lot of it would be picked up here and taken elsewhere in the state. Any other questions? Please, if you have them, please ask.
I think one of the most shocking things from this case is seeing that with Mr. Harris's background, working in the school system, and I know the question's been asked before with the investigators, but Sheriff, I didn't know if you had any questions or if you even were kind of surprised seeing that, he was a teacher and beloved in his community down near the Charlotte area, seeing that this was kind of what was happening, here in Alamance County.
Well, first of all, nothing surprised me. I've been in this business right at 50 years now, and nothing surprises me. There's people and families that have relatives that violate the law, and a lot of them never know what's going on. So nothing surprised me in this case. Now, I do hate that it had to happen in this county, and we're going to do everything that we can to see that this type of crime and behavior will not happen here again. I can tell you that. We're going to be working hard. Our people have been working around the clock on this, and we're going to follow every single lead there is. Don't care where it takes us. Yes, sir.
How many different agencies were involved in this investigation? And also, all of the stuff that go ahead.
All right. Anson County, Wadesboro PD helped us a lot because that's where these individuals were located, and then of course we had DEA, SBI, our agency working.
And as far as everything that was found in the stash house, as far as weapons or drugs or anything like that, can you kind of dive into what exactly was found there, if anything?
We did locate one firearm within the residence.
I guess the one thing that surprised me, it didn't surprise me, but it did, is wearing a bulletproof vest. Of course, it didn't help Mr. Harris because, different vests are made to stop different ammunitions, and he was a loser in that game.
And are you specifically, where you were talking about retribution being kind of a hallmark of cartel activity, are you specifically worried about that taking place in Alamance County or that happening elsewhere?
I'll be honest with you. I fear for some of the family there in Wadesboro. And I still fear here. We don't know who else is all involved. I know the cartel, they have the reputation. They don't lose. They're going to pay somebody back. That's what worries me right now. I care about the people in Anson County. I hope nobody gets retaliated against. But you never know when you're dealing with this type of case with people.
And I know you mentioned Mr. Harris was following these different cartels. Was he involved in a particular gang or an organization himself?
Not that we can find at this time. Not saying he was, not saying he was. I know he was involved in that clique. He was doing, trying to do home invasions and drug dealers.
And as far as that, the two members were him and his relative, and then were there other members involved in too, or how large was that clique?
We're looking at other people on both sides. That's all I'll be going to say on that. Anything else? Thank y'all very much, folks. You need to, I appreciate the media being here. We need to let everybody know what's going on in our nation, our state, and our county, because it's getting very, very bad. Thank
you. Thanks for joining us. You can reach us at 252-365-5593 or at truecrimexcess.com or truecrimexcess@gmail.com if you want to send us a note. This episode was brought to you by LabrottieCreations.com. That's LabrottieCreations.com. Check out the merchandise and specifically their fun Pop Pet art custom pieces made from photos of your very own pets. Use the promo code CRIMEXS, that's CRIMEXS, for 20% off a fun, brightly colored, happy piece of art of your own pet at their site, LabrottieCreations.com. Music in this episode was licensed for True Crime XS. The theme song was Indestructible by Noah Smith. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform or at TeePublic, Instagram, or Twitter. You can also join us on Patreon to fund future body exploration trips. But the best thing you can do for us is leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and share us with your friends. And we'll see you next time.
This is True Crime XS.
Oh, I wanna feel something. I just wanna breathe again. Dive into the deepest end. Oh, I wanna feel